The movie opens in South Korea, where we meet a Catholic priest, Sang Hyun, who volunteers at a hospital and ministers to the sick patients. He's highly respected for his unwavering faith and dedicated service, but secretly suffers from lingering feelings of doubt and sadness. One day, Sang Hyun meets his superior, Father Ro, and states that he wants to do something meaningful for humanity. He thus asks Father Ro to send him to a laboratory in Africa, where research is being conducted on a deadly virus called Emmanuel. Father Ro is hesitant because the research is not approved by the Vatican, and no one knows what they truly do there. But when Sang Hyun insists that it is painful to watch people die of the virus every day, Ro finally agrees. In the next scene, Sang Hyun finally arrives at the lab, where he is informed about the virus, which causes severe blisters that quickly spread and lead to painful ulcers before eventual death. The doctors warn him that if he becomes infected during the experiment, he will die, as there is no cure. However, Sang Hyun isn't scared and is willing to proceed for the greater good. They explain that they will first inject him with the vaccine, then expose him to the Emmanuel virus, and monitor him to see if the vaccine works. In the following days, Sang Hyun undergoes the experiment and spends his time writing and playing volleyball. The scene then cuts to a month later, where we see wounds and blisters covering his body, and his health has deteriorated to the point that he begins vomiting blood. He is rushed to the emergency room and given a blood transfusion, but despite everything, the priest dies. The doctors cover his body with a sheet, but moments later, they shockingly hear Sang Hyun praying, and his blisters have disappeared. The scene then cuts to 6 months later, where Sang Hyun has returned to South Korea and is welcomed by a group of sick people who see his recovery as a miracle. They carry a statue of the bandaged Christ and ask him to pray for their sick family members. Out of 500 volunteers, he is the only survivor, but since he still has some blisters left, he has to bandage his face. In the following days, Sang Hyun's skin begins to gradually improve, and during this time, he notices that he has become strangely sensitive to sound and smell. One day, while volunteering at the hospital, he is approached by a woman named Mrs. Ra, who asks him to pray for her sick son, Kang Woo. Sang Hyun then realizes that he knows these people, and Kang Woo is actually his childhood friend. The priest also recalls Kang Woo's little sister, Tae-ju, but Mrs. Ra clarifies that she isn't her daughter, but she raised her after the girl's parents abandoned her. Turns out Tae-ju is now married to Kang Woo, but she doesn't seem happy about it. The scene then cuts to a few days later when Kang Woo has recovered and returned home. The family feels grateful to Sang Hyun and invites him to their home for dinner. That night, several family friends also arrives to play mahjong, including a retired cop Song Dae, Young Do, and his wife Evelyn. They all play mahjong together, and Mrs. Ra proudly tells everyone how the priest healed her son at the hospital. Not long after, Kang Woo humiliates Tae-ju and throws her to the ground while exposing her undergarments, which Sang Hyun observes with a disturbing attraction. The woman quickly rises and attempts to slap her husband but eventually stops herself. That night, Sang Hyun lashes himself with a stick as a punishment for having sinful desires. The next morning, he is awakened by sunlight, which begins to burn his skin. He thus spends the day hiding in a closet and only emerges at night when he notices his skin has erupted in blisters once again. That night, Sang Hyun arrives at the hospital to volunteer, during which he has a strong desire to drink blood. Unable to resist, he approaches a comatose patient and begins to drink his blood from the IV tube. His blisters suddenly start healing again, and he no longer even needs glasses to see. Tormented by his actions, the priest attempts to take his own life by jumping out of a window, but shockingly, he doesn't even get slightly hurt. Not far away, Tae-ju runs out of the house barefoot to calm her anger. Shockingly, she collides with Sang Hyun, who feels a strong attraction to her and puts her into his shoes before leaving. The next morning, Sang Hyun meets with Father Ro and confesses everything that has been happening to him. Father Ro then inserts his hand all the way into Sang Hyun's heart, and when he removes it, the wound closes. Sang Hyun shares his desire for blood and suspects that he has turned into a vampire. He is unsure how to satisfy his thirst without harming anyone, so Father Ro shockingly cuts his own hand and allows Sang Hyun to drink his blood. In the following days, Sang Hyun continues to visit Mrs. Ra's house on mahjong nights, and starts to feel a strong attraction to Tae-ju. One evening, she's about to run out barefoot again when he suddenly blocks her way. She then takes the priest to a room so she can return his shoes from a few days ago, but one thing leads to another, and the two end up passionately kissing and making out. During this, Tae-ju shares how unhappy she is in her marriage and is tired of being treated like a dog by Mrs. Ra and her idiot son. She then climbs on top of Sang Hyun to make love, but suddenly Kang Woo loudly summons her. Tae-ju thus reluctantly heads to the living room, where her mother-in-law slaps her for failing to take care of her husband. The next day, Tae-ju tells Mrs. Ra that she wants to do something fulfilling, so she has decided to volunteer at a hospital on Sundays. Her mother-in-law also doesn't object, and on Sunday, Tae-ju arrives at the hospital, where she meets the priest. He is also very happy to see her and takes her to a room where the unconscious comatose patient is lying. Sang-hyun hesitates to get closer and worries about going to hell. But Taeju claims she doesn't even believe in God. In the end, they both succumb to their desires and passionately make love next to the comatose patient. Afterward, Taeju suggests meeting during the day next time so they can spend more time together. But Songhyun says that isn't possible. He decides to be honest and begins feeding on the patient's blood, which frightens her and makes her run away. Later, Taeju is in her bathroom at home when Sang-hyun suddenly appears inside. He tries to explain that he is a good person, which is why he volunteered for the experiment that ultimately turned him into a vampire. He promises to take her away from her boring husband, but Taeju refuses, prompting the priest to jump out of the window. However, days later, Sang-hyun receives a call from Taeju, who asks if his disease is transmitted through physical intimacy. The two then meet again on a hospital rooftop, where he drinks the blood ration he stole and shows her how his blisters disappear afterward. He then picks her up and begins leaping with her from roof to roof, which fascinates her. While carrying her, Sang-hyun notices bruises on her leg and asks what happened. Taeju reveals that her husband is physically abusive, which makes the priest very angry. However, later, at home, Kang-woo is also shocked to see her bruises, so Taeju claims she was hit by some mental patients at the hospital. Elsewhere, Sang-hyun meets with Father Ro, who says he would give anything to see the sunrise by the sea before he dies. He asks the priest to give him some vampire blood so he can regain his sight, but Sang-hyun refuses. He then leaves, telling him that he is no longer a priest and no longer cares about the rules or the Vatican. With nowhere else to go, Sang-hyun arrives at Mrs. Ra's house, where she gladly agrees to shelter him. However, while everyone else is asleep, he and Taeju secretly meet and end up making love. Days later, Mrs. Ra decides to put a lock on Taeju's room since she keeps sneaking out every night, which she assumes is just sleepwalking. This enrages Taeju, and in her frustration, she grabs a pair of scissors and harms herself. However, when Sang-hyun notices her wounds, she claims they were caused by Kang-woo, which makes him extremely angry. He wants to kill the man, but she calms him down and insists they need a proper strategy. Days later, Sang-hyun, Kang-woo, and Taeju go fishing at a prohibited lake late at night. Once they reach the middle of the lake, the priest lunges at Kang-woo and throws him into the water, but the hook accidentally catches Taeju's ear and tears it. Kang-woo desperately tries to climb back onto the boat, but Sang-hyun drags him down and brutally ends his life. The couple rejoice that their plan has finally succeeded. But suddenly the boat capsizes and Taeju falls into the water as well. Not long after, the authorities arrive and take the unconscious Taeju to the hospital. While Sang-hyun grabs a huge rock and jumps back into the lake, he sets the rock atop the dead body, which he had hidden inside a submerged cabinet. Later, Sang-hyun returns to the church, and outside the gate, he notices some of his followers who consider him a god. They kneel before him and pray, but Sang-hyun grows annoyed and goes to see Father Ro to confess his crimes. But Father Ro doesn't seem to care and insists on tasting the vampire blood again. But in a shocking twist, Sang-hyun suddenly stabs him to death and drinks his blood to satisfy his thirst. He then puts the body in his car and drives to a cliff to toss it far into the ocean. In the following days, Sang-hyun and Taeju are haunted by Kang-woo's death and experience vivid hallucinations. Meanwhile, Kang-woo is assumed dead, so Mrs. Ra begins drinking heavily while grieving for her son and soon sinks into a paralyzed state. Sang-hyun and Taeju care for her, and despite being constantly haunted by Kang-woo's visions, they try to act normal and get intimate at any chance they get. One evening, the couple celebrates Mrs. Ra's birthday, even though the woman is still paralyzed. Taeju angrily slaps her mother-in-law, so the priest slaps her in turn, asking her to show some respect for the older woman. Taeju then accidentally blurts out that her husband never raised a hand on her, which makes the priest furious. He accuses her of lying, but she insists he shouldn't make excuses, as he would have killed Kang-woo anyway to be with her. This sparks a heated argument between them, and Taeju confesses to her mother-in-law that the priest killed her husband, but Sang-hyun argues that it was all her idea. Although Mrs. Ra cannot react, she understands everything and begins having convulsions, so the priest gives her CPR. Taeju tries to run away, but he catches her, during which she begs him to kill her so she can be with Kang-woo. In a fit of rage, Sang-hyun snaps her neck and kills her, but he instantly regrets his actions. To bring her back, he cuts his own wrist and makes her drink his vampire blood. Moments later, Taeju finally wakes up and is thrilled to learn that she has now become a vampire like him. The couple reconciles their differences and hugs tightly, while the old woman is left in shock. Since the couple can't go out during the day, they decide to paint the house all white so it can look like daytime. Taeju begins to embrace her new condition and starts killing people randomly for their blood without any remorse. Sang-hyun disapproves of this and says that he knows a group of people who want to end their lives from whom they could safely get blood. But Taeju argues that taking blood from willing people isn't fun, and since they are no longer human, there's no point in holding on to their humanity. One day, Taeju becomes very sick and begins vomiting blood, so Sang-hyun brings a doctor for her. But the evil woman suddenly stabs the doctor in the neck and drinks his blood as well. Not long after, the group of friends playing mahjong arrives, so the couple quickly hides the doctor's body. Everyone gathers around and begins playing, during which Mrs. Raw starts moving her fingers slightly. The group decides to involve her in the game and asks her to indicate yes or no by blinking. Suddenly, the woman begins pointing her fingers at the mahjong pieces and soon conveys the word killed. She also points to her son's picture, so Sungdae tells her that no one killed her son, but Mrs. Raw suddenly looks toward the vampire couple and begins blinking, after which everyone realizes that she's accusing them of the murder. Realizing their cover is blown, Taeju begins attacking all the guests, who run for their lives. She proceeds to kill the men and excitedly drinks their blood, which horrifies the priest. Taeju is soon approached by Evelyn, who stabs her, but nothing happens to the vampire woman. Upon seeing the chaos, Sang-hyun tells her that they must flee, as authorities will be investigating the disappearance of these people. Evelyn tries to escape, but the priest pretends to bite her neck and covers her to make it look like she's dead. Afterward, the vampire couple leaves the house, while Evelyn gets up and is horrified to see the men dead. Later, Sang-hyun visits the encampment of worshippers who consider him a god. He approaches a girl there and tries to assault her, but she screams and alerts everyone. This leaves the people horrified, so they throw stones at the priest and chase him away. However, this was all part of the priest's plan, as he didn't want these people to idolize him or consider him a god. After returning to the car, Taeju notices that Song-hyun is starting to develop blisters, realizing that he only pretended to drink Evelyn's blood. She then falls asleep, and Song-hyun drives them to a deserted place by the sea and breaks the car key. When Taeju wakes up, she is horrified because morning is approaching and they have nowhere to go. It turns out that the priest is tired of the bloodshed and has decided to end their lives once and for all. The terrified woman grabs Sang-hyun and locks both of them inside the car trunk, but he easily breaks free and throws the trunk into the water. Feeling desperate, Taeju makes a hole in the ground under the car and crawls in to avoid the sunlight, but Sang-hyun drives the car away, while we see that Mrs. Raw is also in the back seat. Realizing there is no way out, Taeju joins her lover on the hood of the car and puts on his old shoes. The couple drinks their last vial of blood, and Song-hyun says he wanted to live with her forever and that they will do it in hell. Taeju tells him that hell doesn't exist, but they had a great time together. Moments later, the sun begins to rise, and both of their bodies start to burn, causing Taeju to scream in pain. The movie ends as the couple is reduced to ashes, while Mrs. Raw watches and smiles from the back seat. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and the bell notification icon.